Good morning, everybody. Happy New Year. Happy Tuesday. Thank you for being here and joining us for your morning. We are delighted to be here. As Voice of God indicated, I lead our CMO program at Deloitte, and our mission is to create a pipeline of qualified, whole, ready marketing and creative and customer leaders, and to support those that are already in the job, and then get those that are in the job placed on boards. And so as a result of that, we often spend a lot of time in the natural habitat of marketers and creatives and customer leaders. But this is our first time after some time to realize that now CES is indeed the natural habitat of these leaders. And as these leaders seek to drive enterprise growth, being part of these forums and bringing the skills and capabilities of customer growth officers, chief marketing officers, chief design officers will be essential for our futures. And so you all are very important because you are now our second audience in this program. This is our first program, so we're delighted to have you here. Thank you for being here. We have some amazing executives to share their perspectives on the future of the customer marketing creative space with the introduction of course, all of the technologies that you will see here, and of course, AI. And for this session, we're excited to talk a little bit about how to infuse AI into your strategy and strategy into AI. Certainly in many of these forums, a lot of our conversations around AI are starting to just get a little samey. And so we're hoping to drive a little bit deeper on strategic use of AI and AI in your strategy. And so with that, I will hand over to our esteemed moderator, CMT, to introduce herself and the panel.
Thank you, Stacey. Hi, everyone. My name is Caroline Modaresi-Tehrani. People call me CMT for obvious reasons. I am a Emmy-nominated journalist, a writer, a podcaster, and for today, I am very, very fortunate to be the moderator of this fantastic panel with these wonderful, esteemed panelists. And I'm hoping to be a little bit of the conduit for you and what you're thinking and the questions that you might have on your minds as well as we talk, as Stacey mentioned, about AI and strategies to help you identify key opportunities while minimizing risk, and of course, allowing yourself to position at the forefront of digital innovation. So without further ado, I'm going to ask our panel to introduce themselves and also just give us one thing you're hoping that people in this room get from this session today. So yeah, I'll start with you.
Awesome. Thank you, Caroline. Really excited to be here and join all of you. My name is Varun Palmer. I'm the general manager at Adobe for Gen Studio for Performance Marketing, which is a Gen AI-first content workflow solution that allows marketers and creatives to produce content for channels like paid media, banner ads, emails, etc., as well as Firefly Services, which is Adobe's foundational models, for creating content, be it images, videos, 3D, animation, audio, etc. In terms of what's the one thing, hopefully by the end of the session you agree with me that I'm the coolest person on the panel. Just kidding. But hopefully you can walk away with some really tangible examples of real implementation of Gen AI inside of the enterprise, particularly some of the things that Adobe is doing. So happy to share some of those examples.
Thanks, Varun.
Thanks.
Thanks, Varun. I think we build rapport on the stage here by lying to the audience. Hi, everyone. Excited to be here. My name is Kim Maines. I lead the content strategy at Meta for our Reality Labs division. So in Reality Labs, that's where we're focused on building immersive experiences, augmented reality, smart glasses, mixed reality, and the metaverse. The one thing I hope for all of you to take away from today's session is the power of AI is incredible, but it's about balance, and it's about keeping the human at the center of the tools that we're creating through AI. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hi all. Thanks, Varun. Thanks, Kim and CMT. My name is Shaurya Nanavati. I am a producer and co-founder of Hyperreal, which is an independent production company. I was at Lionsgate for a handful of years before that, and I focus on film and TV, and a lot of my clients deal with AI and how it's impacting their business. Now, the one takeaway I think I would like y'all to have, as Kim mentioned, is that it is about balance. Like, there is no shortage of hyperbole in what AI is capable of doing and how it'll impact your business. But at the end of the day, we need to realize there are two sides to every coin, and we need to remember who we are catering to, entertainment too, right? The content too. And I think that's going to help keep things in focus, if that makes sense.
I think that's great. I want to dive right into, Kim, the point you made about the balance and that human-centric. What is your mantra to ensure that humans are continuing to be at the center of all of this technology? And how do you sort of apply that to your specific role at Meta?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest impacts that we're seeing in regards to AI is in productivity, and especially in Reality Labs, we create high quality games. We have streaming content, immersive content, but it's about balance. It's about keeping the human at the center, which is what we call human in the loop. So whether it's creating content and unlocking the ability for people with no technical skills that don't have deep understandings of complex systems to be able to use a prompt and create content like never before, or whether it's from a content moderation perspective, making sure that we have humans that are the ones kind of in the middle, making sure that we're making the right decisions and having AI help us inform better decision making.
And when you say the right decisions, again, can you just help us put the thumb on the scale? And then Varun, I want to come to you, but particularly when you think about the right decision in, a US context might be different from in a global context. Like, what metrics are you using? What's your rubric to, ensure that you are making the right decision?
Yeah, I think it's about diversity and again about balance. I think it's about diversity in our data sets. It's about making sure that our large language models are leveraging diverse data sets across culture, across language. And so I think it's about a lot of diversity of data and a diversity of viewpoints, diversity, everything down to the diversity, my personal opinion, and I'm a strong advocate for making sure that the individuals that are building the technology represent the diversity of the customers and the users that are using it across culture and background. And so driving diversity of thought within the teams as well.
Varun, how do you think about the sort of AI and content creation? And how do you sort of think about the role of the human in that process?
Yeah, I think I'll have to agree with Kim wholeheartedly that we think of AI as an augmentation tool as opposed to a replacement tool, right? And when we think about augmentation tool, I think it's really, really easy to get to 80% of what you need with the state of the art that's out there. But to get to 100%, that's where sort of the human ingenuity, the creativity really comes in. So when we think about at Adobe and building products and stuff, like we are really thinking about, what does that workflow look like, where somebody can very quickly, in terms of brainstorming, ideation, storyboarding, getting to that first concept really, really quickly, within seconds, get to that state, and then have human in the loop from a workflow perspective, review, approvals, final publishing step, bring in that creativity before sort of the content gets published out. So I think Kim talked about data. I think the other thing we'll say is that Adobe in particular has a very, very unique perspective on the AI models, the frontier models, the foundational models, and everything that we're doing actually is trained on content that is either permissioned, where we're actually paying out to the content creators for every piece of content, image, video, what have you, where our model is trained, or it's out in the public domain where the copyright has expired. So I think because we have a highly curated data set, the models that we are creating behave in a specific way where we are comfortable with the output that actually comes out.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned, obviously anyone who's been paying attention and following sort of the news around this particular area is that content creators are very anxious. There have been a lot of lawsuits, particularly in the UK at the moment, around content creators wanting to ensure that they safeguard their rights. And Sharia, obviously, you are kind of not only a content creator, but you're sort of representing, if you will, the entire industry. So no pressure. But just, talk to me a little bit about how you see AI from the content creator perspective. Like, do you balance, how do you balance the threat of AI versus the opportunity?
I mean, it's a great question. I think it all comes down to how you view AI. Ideally, it's an augmentative tool. Ideally, you're using it in a similar fashion. Now, I equate it, how it is impacting film and entertainment You know, you can kind of go back and see music, how you had this software, GarageBand or Logic, that allows you to emulate so many different kinds of amps or guitar sounds and stuff, right? AI can now bring that ability to a layperson. You don't have to be trained in using Premiere or any of these tools. You can now have AI that can round up all these things, right? So it significantly lowers the barriers of entry for someone to come in and showcase what they want. It then allows you to potentially do a proof of concept for what you're trying to build out and prove the concept before you even need to plunk down any kind of cash or an outlay, right? Now, where it gets tricky is how do you draw that line between the tool versus the human input and the creative, right, and control. That remains to be, I think it'll work itself out over time. I think it's going to be hinged largely on the consumer and what their appetite is and their acceptance level for AI-generated content versus AI manipulated content, if that makes sense.
Well, and the sort of, to that point, Kim, you know, when you're thinking about at Reality Labs, when you're thinking about tech and, you know, wearable tech obviously is the sort of field that you've been most involved in, but how do you sort of put your thumb on the scale when it comes to what us humans are ready for? You know, because it's often the case that the technology far outpaces sort of our appetite. So how are you making those decisions? What is sort of the metrics that you're using to make those decisions?
Yeah, as most of you probably know, we're a very metrics-driven company. And one of the things that we're constantly measuring is product market fit. So we're always placing bets on different types of technology. When it comes to hardware, we've been working on, we just announced at Connect earlier, the proof of life of Orion, which is our first augmented reality glasses. We didn't start working on those yesterday. We've been working on those for over a decade, but getting it to a point where we feel good and confident about the technology. And so we're constantly kind of making bets. We've been doing research in AI for many years. You know, it feels like it came out of nowhere when it comes to the industry and kind of the consumer impact. But we've been working on that as a research project for many, many years. That's why we're able to open source our Llama model and put the Meta AI assistant on the glasses that we already had in market. And so it's really just taking risks and placing bets, but then also listening to how the product is being responded to by the market.
Is that the sort of bottom line for you? You know, like, I mean, obviously the past weekend there wasn't Reality Labs, it was at Facebook, which is obviously under the Meta company, rolled back on Gen AI profiles. You know, so that was because of an audience resistance, I guess, to that kind of technology. Is it always about what the audience is sort of saying? Is that sort of your bottom line in terms of what drives your decision making about when people are ready or when, you know, a tech is ready to be rolled out?
No, I think it's about balance. I think it's about definitely listening, but then also they're using intuition around, like sometimes it's the timing to the market of something. You know, we saw this a decade ago with Google Glass. Was that a good idea? Yeah, it probably was, but it was the timing to the market was too early. And so I think it's about using data, it's about balance, it's about refining intuition. We also, you know, we're led by a visionary founder CEO. And so Mark has a vision, and he'll make plays that maybe we're not ready for from the market perspective, but he wants to develop the technology just so to make sure that we're, you know, we have a diversity of plays as we're driving innovation for the entire tech industry.
Varun, talk to me a little bit about that idea as well about, I mean, that's about sort of risk calculation, right? At Adobe, can you give us a tangible example of when you've had to make one of those risk calculuses and it didn't go right, at least not on the first try?
Yeah, I think like at the core of this, I think our philosophy is all around responsible AI. I think a lot of the folks here in attendance probably in some shape or form like interact with Adobe products. And so, you know, anything that we do actually has to have that sort of core value baked in. And, you know, the way we are evaluating some of these things, you know, so building on what Kim was saying, is that it's the intersection of where the technology is ready, you know, where is the state of the art in terms of these foundational frontier models, and where is the biggest market opportunity. So it's the intersection of the two that we're looking at. Now, coming back to your specific question around like the risk factors and stuff, right? I mean, we have in our labs, a lot of advanced technology, and we are obviously evaluating like when is the right time to release it. And one of the key factors is what's the risk associated with it. So for example, we have advanced video models where you can do auto dubbing and lip sync. That's a great example where the technology can be used in ways that may not be in line with what the society wants to do. So we have very strong controls put in place where anyone getting access to those models has to first consent to the specific use cases and the applicability of that technology before it goes out. And also, as it relates to sort of the timing of the release of these models are also important. Like just in US right now, we just came out of a presidential election and stuff. And I think so we are factoring all of those things in relative to when we release these technology out in the marketplace. And we have sets of teams, both on the product side, legal side, compliance side, that's actually in close loop with all of our engineers and R&D folks determining when's the right time to release it and what's the right mechanism to do that.
Kim, one more point, and then Shari, I'll come back to you, but just that idea about the responsibility piece in all of this. So when you're thinking about being responsible and responsible first, how are you talking to your team about balancing the kind of the play element and like being able to play in the sandbox and continue to push the envelope with that responsibility framework that you've both been talking about?
The responsibility framework specific
to audiences, to consumers.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we stand behind as a principle is that we don't want to be the arbiter of truth, and that's a really hard thing. So responsibility is a thing that can't be just one company controlling, and so we look a lot to collaboration within the industry to really define what responsibility means and to make sure that we're maintaining that balance, and so that we don't have one single company or one entity being the one that's defining what is acceptable.
Shari, talk to me a little bit about that from your standpoint as a kind of content creator.
Speak about...
How do you feel about sort of like when you're thinking about being a content creator in these spaces, how are you viewing the partners and how are you choosing the partners to work with?
Speaking completely candidly and honestly, as a creator, you want as little influence from the outside as you can afford. It all depends on who's funding it, right? I would say ideally your partners...
There are lots of people in the audience that are agreeing with you, by the way.
Yeah. I would say ideally you want to partner with people that can give you a little bit of leeway, give you a little bit of autonomy. When it comes to the different tools that are out there, I think it is going to become important for the creators to understand how their input and their use of the tools is going to, A, benefit the people that created the tool, but also how it's going to impact the future iterations of that tool. And this is something I've been thinking about a lot, is that once you relinquish that control, like we know when we sign the EULAs and all this stuff, like you don't really know what's in there. You don't know what you're giving up until it's too late. I would hope that there is a push on both sides to kind of level set what that means. Maybe there's some ground rules that we go into it, right? You go in saying that let's use this, we're doing it together. Maybe we both benefit from it, right? I don't know. I think there's a fine line to walk.
I think it's great. Yeah, Varun.
Yeah, I was gonna just add, in terms of your question on this one, CMT, when we think about responsible AI, I think transparency is a key principle that is the cornerstone of responsible AI. And one of the things that Adobe has done is, I don't know, some folks might be aware of this. It's called the Content Authenticity Initiative. So think of it as a nutritional label. So whenever you pick up a piece of food, there's a nutritional label on it. What we've done is, and this is something that is out in the community, so Adobe pioneered it and we brought it out to the community. So now there's an alliance of hundreds of companies that have embraced it, where if you look at a piece of content, you will actually see a watermark on it in terms of, is this AI content or not? And if it is AI content, you'll actually see the lineage of how it was created. So I think that alone, it's a small concept, but it's really, really powerful in terms of making sure that when people are consuming this content, that was produced using AI, they know, what it is. Is it like generated by a human or was it AI?
I think it's a great segue to my next question, which is about sort of AI shaping audience engagement, right? I think a lot of people here, you're creatives, you may be representing brands or your own brand, as we all are. But with so much Gen AI out there, it can be sometimes there's that a bit of ick factor, right? When we feel like, oh, this doesn't feel organic, this feels sort of, there's that ick. Right, that's a technical term, by the way. But so Kim, how do you sort of see AI shaping audience engagement in a way that does feel personal and does feel organic, rather than manipulative or algorithmically driven?
Yeah, I think I think we view that as putting the human at the center. I mean, when it comes down to it, engaging content is meaningful because it has that human touch to it. And so we think about not replacing humans using AI, but how do we enable humans to be more creative using the technology? And so I think it's about putting the human at the center. We talked a lot about human in the loop. When it comes to engaging audiences, I think AI can be even more powerful than we were able to do today, just because it can learn faster, it can respond faster to user trends, to changes in behavior, but you gotta put the human at the center. So we view it as like a creative co-pilot where it's giving you a bunch of insights, but the human is at the center to be able to action those insights and make decisions.
And can you pull the curtain back a little bit for us? Because we are at CES, this is about like the innovation future of tech. You are sort of helming Reality Labs, so what is the future of wearable tech? Can you give us like a little sneak peek as to something that is coming down the pipe, given that the latest iteration's been 10 years in the making? What are we going to be seeing in 10 years' time?
Yeah, I think
trade secrets are fine, right? Everyone signed an NDA. It's all good.
No, nobody's gonna tell. We're all cool here, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I talked a little bit about Orion, our augmented reality glasses. I think we've shown that the proof of life of that technology, that's definitely coming. You're going to see products hit the market in the next 10 years. I think that we're going to see a lot more AI-first devices. So one of the things that I'm excited about is AI-first devices and the ability to unlock what we call contextual AI. And so think about having a device that hears what you hear, sees what you see, and has all the context following you up the day, to be able to be more personalized and to be a personalized assistant, if you will. And so think about like a simple example. I have 2 toddlers, so milk is a big thing in my house. It's like you talked about earlier, you were low on milk, you're in the grocery store, let me remind you to get milk. I don't have that problem, I always need milk, but that's just an example of what we're seeing, AI-first devices and how that's gonna unlock the potential of contextual AI.
Varun, talk to me a little bit about that in what you've been doing with Adobe, particularly around like big C campaigns, right? You just did one on Black Friday. Can you just give us a little bit of insight as to what you learned?
Yeah, if you look at these big C campaigns, like Black Friday, in the past, like what we had to do was it was a 9-month process, right? Like the task of actually creating all of the content, coming up with the strategy, like it started off 9 months before actually, Thanksgiving. And now with AI, all of a sudden, things that would take like, 9 months can be brought down to 9 weeks, and if you typically look at like a campaign that Adobe is doing, I'll probably ask some folks, like, if you try to take a guess, like the amount of content that is going in there, it's about 60,000 pieces of images or videos that actually get produced that then get trafficked across different channels and geographies across different products and stuff. So with AI now, you can dramatically reduce not only the time, which is the 9 months down to like 9 weeks, but you can now start to actually create infinitely more variants of this content for all of these campaigns. And I think like to your earlier question around audience engagement, I think like our belief is that personalization is what drives engagement. And there are 3 pillars to personalization. There's obviously the data, knowing who the customer is. There's the journeys that you're going to orchestrate with that data for the customers. And then there is the content, right? And the past like 20 to 30 years, we've invested a lot, and we've quite often like perfected this whole data and journeys aspect of it. What we haven't done is actually perfected that content to be highly personalized. And the reason for that is that it's extremely expensive to create content at scale that's hyper-personalized, right? Just imagine like producing a 5 or a 10-second video, like Shaurya can actually give you these numbers based on all of his expertise and working with clients. And now with Gen AI, you can actually go and knock out this whole content piece, which then actually will unlock massive opportunities.
And it frees up your time as well. Shaurya, you were the VP of Content Analysis for Lionsgate Motion Picture Group for a long time before your current role at Hyperreal. So, Varun was just talking to us about like the life cycle of a campaign and how that has radically changed because of Gen AI. What about the life cycle of a movie?
Yeah.
How has that changed given this rapid rise of LLMs and Gen AI?
I mean, we had started seeing the changes in the windowing and all that stuff well before COVID hit and the lockdowns and all that stuff. That everything, super sped everything up. I think there's a seismic shift in consumer behavior, obviously. The life cycle of a film now used to be a short would be a proof of concept for a director, showcase a talent, showcase a story, and then maybe you can get interest and go out and make a feature or a TV series from it, right? Now with the lowering of the barriers of entry, with AI coming on board and affording creators the tools to do these things at speed and at cost, at a price, I think you're now gonna see feature films are the new proof of concept. And that'll allow you an access point to your audiences in every other media there is, be it interactive or video games or books or anything else, right? And I think once you have that IP created, that's just one more point of entry for a fan, right? And I think it just makes it that much easier for people to get in.
I think that's fascinating, the idea it will be like a feature. This has just radically shifted. But you think of things in a way as well, you seem to be excited, right? Aside from, harkening back to GarageBand, which we're all glad that we don't have any examples of that, right? People who frame. But is your excitement shared by the other folks in your industry still? Are you seeing more of that and less of the anxiety?
I think it depends on who you ask and what you're asking them about. There is tremendous stress and anxiety out there because writers, actors, even actors to a certain extent are like, we don't know what the future is, right? Mm-hmm. Because you could have a completely computer-generated, AI-generated character on screen that does not require any human to be filmed or anything. You don't need mocap or anything, right? So it depends on what the question is and it depends on what side of the bed they wake up on. You either have anxiety or you have excitement. And I think as long as we level set and we think about it the right way, AI as a tool to help you create, as opposed to something that's coming for you, I think that tends to make people more excited than anxious.
And Kim, pulling on that thread a little bit, a lot of what the anxieties can be around are around echo chambers, right? I think that people have all seen, you'll open up whatever, social media app or whatever it might be on your phone, and you'll feel like, well, hang on a second, I feel like I'm getting the same kind of content, or it feels like there's like an echo chamber. How are you thinking about that from a developer standpoint? How are you attracting creators that are perhaps, creating different content for users so we don't get that ick I mentioned earlier?
Yeah, I think we've talked some about this, but I'll just expand a little bit about the possibilities that are being unlocked leveraging AI. We're lowering the barriers to entry for creators. People don't have to have technical skill sets to be able to create engaging content, and so I think that's going to have a huge impact. Just diversifying the type of content because you've unlocked opportunity for a lot more creators and developers. I think the other thing is around control, and so making sure that as we're developing these tools and technologies, we're also developing the controls and tools for people to make their own choices about the type of content that they want to see, what resonates with them, and then also giving them transparency around how the AI in the background what is it doing in the background, so that they can build more trust and make better informed choices with the controls that we give them.
Well, and I think it's important that we kind of lay some of this foundation around trust and responsibility. And then, we promised that this would be a session where you could write some things down specifically around strategy. And so ensuring that we deliver on our promise. Varun, talk to us a little bit about AI in terms of strategy for scale and for supply chains. How are you thinking of that, and how have you thought about that at Adobe?
And when you say scale and supply chain, like maybe
you're talking specifically around some of the campaigns that you've developed and making sure that you are avoiding that kind of echo chamber that we talked about.
Yeah. So I think there are like maybe like two things I would say. Like the first one is like we talked about like transparency is one of the principles for responsible AI. I think like the other thing that we are big on is explainability. I think it's a very key concept in AI because when you're trying to produce a content and you say like, oh, something got produced, like why did it produce this? So like specific example in the case of our product like Gen Studio, which is enabling the content supply chain inside of a brand, is that you give us your brand guidelines, which is typically a document. It's a Word document, PDF document, whatever it is, you just upload it. And we have an agentic framework where the first agent sort of looks at your brand guidelines and then tries to learn from it so that when it goes and creates this content, it's actually abiding by the brand guidelines. And we know how important it is for all of the global brands here in attendance. There is another agent that then starts to evaluate all of the content that was produced by the first agent. So we have actually two agents sort of in this adversarial AI sort of configuration, where the second one is evaluating on each and every dimension that your brand cares about on the content that was produced by the first brand. And when it's going ahead and actually it's giving you a grade for how the content was produced, it actually tries to explain why it gave a specific grade. So when we talk about sort of the AI strategy and how we are building some of these products and stuff, like I think like the first thing as we've talked about is like how do you get the human in the loop? So it's really easy to get to the 80%, but then how do you have a workflow where you bring the human, the marketing professional, or the creative professional in the workflow so that they can complete the remaining 20% before the content is ready for activation. But then more importantly, making sure that strategically, you're figuring out like what are these use cases where AI can be actually put in production, right? So one example is that Adobe sends out about 6 to 7 billion emails annually.
Wait, that's
which
with
is
a B,
about
right?
the population like out there, the humans on this planet and stuff. Yeah. So and so you can imagine the amount of content that we are actually producing that is actually helping facilitate some of these emails. The interesting statistic I'll leave you with is that using Gen Studio, 100% of content for all of our emails in North America is being produced through AI and being reviewed by our marketers. 100% of the content, and we actually achieved that in Q4 of this past year. So that's a very tangible example of why, as a company, we've invested in these products. And what's amazing is that in the past, like we've had like typically, like if you are a performance marketer or a growth marketer, there's like usually segments that you are going and targeting. In the past, we were only able to create content for 50% of the segments that we want to target as part of our install base. But for the very first time, not only were we able to get 100% of this content, driven through this Gen AI tool, which has this transformative impact of shorter time to market, much dramatically lowered costs, but we were able to target 100% of these personas. So this goes back to your earlier point around how we are doing personalization and how we are actually doing engagement, is that when you deliver these personalized messages where the content is personalized to the user, then you can actually start to drive these business outcomes. And that's what strategically we are trying to do using all of the AI investments that we're making.
And what I think is fascinating, and Sharia, maybe it kind of maps onto your industry and your wheelhouse as well, is this idea that Varun was just talking about in terms of like targeting audiences. Typically I think that women are often very underserved when it comes to movies, minorities in particular, but there is a huge box office demand and there's a box office appetite. But as you mentioned, the money often isn't there. Right. Do you see there then as being sort of like, because of the data now, do you see there as being more opportunity for minorities, for people who don't typically get served?
Absolutely. I think this allows a lot more people to express themselves and come onto the stage, right? That's number one. The technology and the tools would allow to do that. I think there's several opportunities. There's a lot of money to be made by catering to these audiences that are not currently going to theaters and not doing all these things. I think it's about meeting them where they are. Now, that said, I'm going to say something outlandish here, so please take it for what you will. I don't necessarily think that the customer knows what they want. The audience does not know what they want until they see it, right? And so I think if you only use past data and things that have been made to just iterate off of that and create that, people will know, like the audience will pick up on that. They're not going to want to see that anymore. They want to see something that is fresh, something new, right? They're not going to know until they see it. And you have all these exit polls, people saying that, oh, we want to watch all these new types of movies. We want to watch dramas on stuff, but they don't go to theaters to watch that, right? They're watching it at home. So the question is, why is what they're telling us not how they're acting or behaving, and how do you use, honestly, at some point you have to just create things to test it out. And I think AI allows you to test things and create things at a much quicker pace, at a much lower cost, and to really get out there, if that makes sense.
Kim, can you reflect on that a little bit, and with your sort of experience at Reality Labs, and maybe with your partnership with Ray-Ban, which you are wearing right now, by the way, just so everyone knows. Are you filming us right now?
No, not right now.
Wait, can we B-roll? Are you going to get the B-roll going, Kim? This is what...
I would probably, I would take a spin on this more of like what the impacts I think in the future. I think that what we're going to see AI impacting in regards to more content for a broader audience is more dynamic content. And so we're going to be seeing AI be able to, while you're watching, let's say an immersive live concert in MR, for example, the AI is sensing your excitement as you're watching it, seeing the things that you're looking at, the visuals that you're engaging with more, knowing what your favorite song is, and then being able to create these interactions that are like, a more personalized interaction for you, more content that you like within that dynamic experience. And potentially things like, personal interactions with an artist. Say you're in a Taylor Swift concert or something and you're getting a more personalized experience. And so I think the impacts of dynamic content and how AI is going to help drive that, I think is going to help with this problem as well.
But to that point, and Varun, maybe you can pull on this thread a little bit for us, which is how do we avoid the echo chamber element there? Because, like you, Kim, I have toddlers at home, and I often am discovering new music because my toddler is asking our at-home, AI device for a song, and 9 out of 10 times it's totally the wrong song. And so I'm learning about like bands I've never heard of because they don't understand my toddler's 3-year-old voice. But I'm avoiding an echo chamber in that way because of mistakes. And so, Varun, how do you sort of see that at scale to ensure that we are getting a little bit of what we want, but also something we didn't expect?
Yeah, I think data is like a key part of how you solve this, and more data that you have in terms of who the user is and what their preference is, and and we have this term in the industry like the customer data profile, CDP, and leveraging that as a key ingredient of the model when you're trying to create these recommendations of this content, I believe is a big way that you can actually go ahead and solve for that. So I think. There's like lots of examples, like in the case of Adobe in particular, like when we are actually doing this personalization, like a key element of the instruction that we're giving to our foundational models is to leverage the either the segment profile or the user profile to actually create things. And by doing that, then you can actually create stuff that is not like in the echo chamber. And then finally, like I mentioned earlier, like explainability is actually a big thing. So when this model is creating something, having human reviewers actually look at why model is making certain decisions and forcing the model to actually explain why they made a particular recommendation or why they created a specific piece of content is a big part of how you avoid that.
Well, in the last couple of minutes we have, I just want to sort of get you all to sort of look to the future. There's so much future tech here at CES. But Kim, what role do you see AI playing in helping retain audiences over time? And what advice would you give people who want to sort of strategize around that? If people open their notebooks, what do you want them to write down?
Yeah, I think I talked a little bit about what I see is a couple of the impacts. One being kind of AI first devices and contextual AI. The other is around dynamic content. And then the third would probably be these kind of live immersive experiences, which I touched on a little bit as well. I think that those we're going to see big impacts in the future that AI is going to be driving. And I think for the one probably key takeaway today, we talked a bit about it being human-centric. We touched a little bit about how it's going to impact industries and jobs. There's a big impact on productivity, I think is the way that I would phrase it. And the one takeaway is that people should just be embracing AI as a technology, learning how it can make you more productive. An example today, we have a product called AI Studio, everyone in this room could go create your own AI and personalize it. You can personalize it to behave the way that you want to respond the way that you want, and starting to use the tools that you have today to understand the power of AI so that you're along on this journey, I think is going to be key.
Sharia, what about you?
I think that's exactly right. I think agentic AI, agent AI is going to be I think that is going to make and allow people to really ingratiate themselves with the technology, because that then you create, when you talk about personalization and engagement, finding new music, right? Back in the day, you used to have friends or your family would send you an album or send you a link or whatever, right? When you use the algorithm, like Spotify's algorithm for the playlist that they come up with, I don't know why they change it every week. It makes no sense to me, right? But number two, you're always listening to the same stuff. It's the same beats. It's the same kind of thing. It's an echo chamber, right? It's a virtuous cycle. It's a vicious cycle. I think the agent AI would allow for there to be a trust between the consumer and the machine, so to speak. And then it's a question of how do you then trust that to bring in the recommendations from other places that are not just either in that vicious cycle or the virtual cycle, right? I think you need to constantly go back and forth, because that's life. It's up and down, you know what I mean? And that's how you grow.
And Varun, I'll give you the final thought. What sort of one thing do you want people to write down? You said you want people to walk away with a tangible example. What sort of big advice would you give them in terms of strategy?
Yeah, so there's a study that Adobe recently did which said that the demand for content is going to go up by 5x over the next 2 years. You should just take a second to reflect on that. 5 times more content is going to be needed over the next 2 years. And we know that virtually every single brand out there is going to struggle, because I don't know of any CMO that is saying that their budget, is actually going to go up by 5x. It's not happening. I think Gen AI is ready. When you think about responsible AI and the principles of transparency and explainability and so on and so forth, to actually help drive these really, really strong business outcomes, because the key driver of this increase of this content is the need to personalize the content, which will actually drive this huge business outcomes. And I think Gen AI is actually ready to actually serve that need.
Sharia, Kim, and Varun, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.